episode is brought to you by the future. Oatly had experts look into the future, which is totally possible, by the way, and then report back about what things will taste like when we get there. Learn about bold ideas, the dawn of decaf, and the rise of fiber in the Future of Taste report on Oatly.com. Welcome back to the Coffee Show, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing a crossover episode today with Chris Deferio from Keys to the Shop. Welcome to the show. Well, I guess this is a collab, so
yeah,
good to see you.
Welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. America's been fantastic. I absolutely love it here. Like, it's just exceeded my expectations beyond belief. We're at the Draped in Blue roasting space. So David Ball, who I interviewed yesterday, was kind enough to lend us the space to link up because we're in Nashville, Tennessee right now, and you're from Kentucky.
That's right, Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah. Does that make you a big-time college basketball guy? Or?
I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a sports guy at all?
Not particularly, actually.
If there's one sport that you do watch, what is it?
I mean, if I was going to get into anything, I suppose it'd be like track and field, like cross country, that kind of thing. So
okay.
That's what I did in high school.
Yep, yeah. I like it. Well, I need to introduce a sponsor for my podcast, which is Apex Labs. So Apex Lab. So are you familiar with them?
I'm not.
The water droppers. So
right.
Use them to kind of harden your water with the ideal mineral composition for brewing filter coffee. It's applicable to espresso as well. So if you're looking for some Apex Lab, use the code KIRK2026 at the checkout and you can get a 10% discount, courtesy of the Coffee Show. Thank you to Apex Lab for sponsoring this show. Now, Chris, you and I feel like we agree on a lot of things.
Right.
And there's a few things that we disagree on. And I'm looking forward to the podcast and throughout that and having a gentlemanly discussion about it. Obviously, for anyone that's part of my audience that isn't familiar with Chris, has Keys to the Shop, which is the podcast, and you're a consultant.
Correct.
So explain a bit about your day-to-day work nowadays.
Nowadays is, keeping the podcast going, obviously getting interviews and learning more about people's stories, but just really coaching and consulting people starting shops or taking their shops and wanting to refine it, get an outside perspective from someone who's been in the industry for a while, and helping where I can, coach them through, help them think about their thinking, work with their teams and their leadership and management to make things better. That's what I do.
What do you think the biggest, issue that you face is? What's the biggest issue that customers have that you help them resolve?
Customers usually, I think, more or less really look for consistent, friendly service and the consistency of quality that on the best days they really hope happens again the next day. And that's really what we try to focus on, is what happens before that in order to make that true. So it's not just the beans you use or the machines you put in place, but it's also how you hire, how you train, how you care for people long term. We've accepted things like turnover is just a part of the business, but it's actually a symptom of things that may have gone wrong upstream from that symptom. So try to think about root causes, like why are things not where you want them to be? How can we address those? And then from there, you can see those opportunities for growth emerge, where before it felt like you were just on this hamster wheel where you just can't get ahead. And that's my job, to help you think through what could be happening, either on site, we're looking at the hospitality, the workflow, the quality, or just over our calls, just asking questions and reflecting on what decisions you've made that have led to this point and what kind of decisions you can make that are different.
Because in a way, this all seems so obvious, right? Yeah. I think it's public discourse that this is a very obvious thing that should be probably the primary focus of every cafe in the world. But the gap between that reality and reality and that knowledge is pretty large. And implementing it is, because coffee is an entry-level job for a lot of the industry, and because it's kind of like the wild, wild west, but the whole world, it creates the need for strengthening the systems, and that's probably primarily the space you work in, I guess.
Yeah. Well, strengthening systems, and I give some talks. We just missed each other in Chicago recently, and I was there for Coffee Fest to give some talks and workshops on one of them, SOPs and systems, where we help people create their first versions of what will be more systems, but really think through exactly what is this meant to uphold. Do you have an ethos or a set of values that are specific enough that you need systems to uphold it, or are you expecting systems to supplement meaning? Because that just doesn't work.
What do you mean by supplement meaning?
Well, if you don't have meaning behind your work, if you don't say what hospitality looks like here's what we want you to be. We want you to be patient and kind and have integrity. When you underfill a drink, you don't serve it, you fill it all the way up. Things like that. If you're not making a specific example readily available to your staff and say, this is where we want to go, then a system is just it can't work, because it's supposed to get you to an end result. If you don't know what the end result is, then you're just relying on other people's work by downloading a manual or, God forbid, asking ChatGPT to write your manual for you. You don't have a place you're going, but you're hoping it gets you there. It doesn't make sense.
And so let me put myself in the listener's shoes here. As I'm a cafe owner, I've got 2 cafes, right? I need, when I get back, I've got to work on the SOPs. If you're my coach, what's kind of the process, and what's the time frame of both, I guess, creating the system, but then implementing it?
Yeah. So in your case, I would say you probably want to look at what affects the customer the most and what affects your staff the most. So people, number one, how are their experiences with your hospitality, and how are their experiences with your product? And if there are bottlenecks and things you need to fix, then that requires maybe some more specificity with your SOPs. Here's how we do this thing so that we get that result. Choose one thing. If you're already in motion, choose one thing and think through the process of what it is to make that, so that all the questions a new barista might have, for example, are answered in the process. So you have to be very specific in creating maybe a list of one, like bathroom cleaning list, for example, when I was making manuals, was maybe like 15 steps to clean the bathroom. But each line had a very specific instruction, so that if you just used that, it would be beautiful. I'm not going to say use your best judgment, because I want a specific result. And then after that SOP is created and you include other people in the process, so you tell your baristas, hey, here's this SOP, what should we add? What's missing here? Get them involved in the creation process, because they're ultimately the ones that have to use this stuff. And we're notorious for kind of overburdening people with so many expectations, but never having thought through the time it takes to do it. Closing checklists are a prime example of that. And we never really feel the empathy, because we haven't done it ourselves as much as we should. We would have created something differently. So SOPs created specifically with the feedback of your staff. And then after that, you kind of train people. You train people over the course of a week or so, one-on-one. You don't just put it on Slack and you say, well, read the message. We expect you to be doing this tomorrow. People have muscle memory. They have a place they like in the cafe. They feel like, I'm competent. But when you change things, it feels dangerous. It feels upsetting. So if you give some time for people to be trained and to acclimate to it, then you're more likely to get buy-in, and people will do that SOP.
Do you think that I've had a tremendous amount of success with hiring people that have no experience in coffee.
Sure.
And pretty much getting them performing so they can't come in and perform obviously at the level an experienced barista can from day one, but within a month to me they're just so much more valuable. And to give you an example, my 2IC effectively, his name's Dennis. Last year he had never worked in coffee. He's now running my business while I'm on a 2-month, tour of America, and he runs the coffee program excellently, and that's the speed at which you can get people ready. And then I just hired someone named Ella, who I actually made a video about her first day. We put meta glasses on her for her first day. Nice. And I just think instilling belief in people is probably one of the most powerful agents for a staff member to have long-term success. Obviously you agree. On what basis do you agree?
I agree, because we do it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you hire somebody as a liability first, that has to prove themselves as an asset later. And a lot of people who are in the world of entrepreneurship working at coffee shops. They are very insecure just with themselves and starting a business. And so hiring people, they hear all the horror stories, they go on the forums and they read just like people are the worst. And like the gentlemen at Valor say, if you're not in love with hiring people and working with people, you shouldn't own a coffee shop. You shouldn't do this. I agree with that. So I agree because when you believe in people, you make up for their own insecurities. They applied with a certain level of belief that this was going to be a good thing. Now it's kind of up to you to come along and be courageous for them where they don't feel courageous. Because, I went and I worked a little bit on a bar after 17 years of coffee experience, and you'd think that I knew what I was doing, but I told everybody, just look, I'm a fourth grader here. Just treat me like that, because I still don't know what to do with my limbs. I don't want to mess it up. There's a lot of pressure. So you coming alongside and believing in people helps them overcome their lack of belief in themselves. Now, you probably hired some pretty great people, and you know what to look for, right?
Yeah, well, I think they had the intangibles.
What are those?
Friendly, curious.
Yeah.
They're not coming to you because they want a job. Like Dennis in particular took a pay cut to come and do the job. So because he was working in finance before, didn't like it. So he downgraded in salary to come work for me, and the long-term payoff I'm sure will be greater. Yeah. But I just think that dynamic of wanting the job. And with Ella, she was someone that's got this, she's actually a graphic designer, and she's got these digital skills that I just don't have, but I desperately need in the business. And she was working somewhere else, and I actually poached her, saying, look, you can come work for me. I needed those skills. I know you're probably not going to, it's not like you're an experienced designer because you've not been working in places for a long time. But I'm willing to work with you and develop you, and you'll be working on the bar 1 or 2 days a week. That's policy for everyone at our business now. So I think I just saw skill sets that are valuable to the business, but also that dynamic of attitude. One side where it's like I want to change careers and I'm really passionate about this, and one where it's like me poaching, and I think there's a certain level of appreciation, flattery in that, and which people perform better with.
Yeah. Well, I like how you said, I'm here, basically you saying, I'm here to help you, to coach you, to develop you. And that's quite different than what I have a lot of people tell me when they hire people. They don't know how to tell the intangibles. And so they hire them, but there's red flags. But they think by doing this I can fix them routine, that they're going to develop them into having those intangibles. So I just want to put a pin on that and say, hey, let's always remember that how you're choosing to bring people in and who you're choosing to bring in will determine how effective your coaching and your development of that person is, because you can't make up for some of these intangibles. If they don't like working with people, I had a private book club with a barista that I didn't want to quit. I thought I could change him. We went through setting the table, chapter by chapter. I really wanted to mentor this person. It just didn't work. It's not who they are. So I love that mentality where you bring in people on purpose, and it's not because it's almost insulting to bring somebody in that's not a good fit for your cafe, because you're putting too much pressure on them to change something integral to their personality. Instead, just find people who align. They have kind of the same DNA as your business. And then if they lack some kind of a manual skill, you can train that. That's the classic thing. Train the skill.
I think there's a lot to say about leadership here as well, because I'm at where I'm at now because I've been in the coffee industry for 10 years and I've been kind of stress tested, you know what I mean? It's taken a while to develop as a person that can actually lead people. 5 or 6 years ago, I wasn't ready, and would probably crash what I'm doing now into the ground. But I think as well, being ready as a leader, it takes time and scars really, and failure.
Yes.
Can you offer us anything like that?
One of the things that I really tell almost every client is that I'm here to help because I've done it every way that it could be done, in a sense where I've got that scar tissue. I have been the boss that people say, you were the best boss that I had. And that's humbling to hear that. But then I've had other people where they don't like me. And frankly, they have good reason, because I'm basically a person in process. And so I've been in coffee this year, I think is year 26, 27. And so when you're young, you have a lot of hubris. You just think, man, I'm passionate, and passion is kind of a replacement for, or this placeholder for future wisdom. And now I feel like after those number of years, I have a little bit of that, and I can share it with the people that listen or the clients. And I try to tell people, you're going to do things wrong, but if you agree to be in process with everybody else, because you start a coffee shop, it's your first time usually starting a coffee shop. And a lot of people you hire is their first time working in it. It's not wrong to be developing yourself while they're developing, because that makes them feel way, like, burdens off. You don't have to be perfect. Don't try to be perfect. Everyone knows you're not, but you have authority. And that authority creates this warp. The way people see you, you've got power. There's a power differential that people don't really take into consideration. I always talk about my wedding ring. It's on my hand. It's weighty. It's a beefier ring. I mean,
it's a good ring.
Yeah, thank you. I pat my son on the head when he was little, and a couple of times it was painful because I didn't realize it was on my hand. It's just the weight I carry with me. I'm used to it. So every boss has that weight. And if you're not accounting for that, you're not able to care for people, and inadvertently you could damage them a little bit, not knowing it, right? So I think that there's this humility, servant leadership. You're serving all of these people. Your staff are your customers, I like to say. So that's where I feel like we need to be as people, even if you don't have 10 years, or 20 some odd years in coffee. If you're trying to be self-aware and apprenticing yourself to the process of growing yourself while your business is growing, people will do that too, because they're going to follow your lead.
Well, I think leadership is the most important thing in any business or in any organization anywhere. Like, to give the most extreme example possible, Elon Musk. A lot of people despise him for his personal views on things, but for his capacity as an engineer, as a CEO, it's to the point where his shareholders want to pay him hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, there was that case where I can't remember how much it was, but they voted to be able to pay him that much because only he can really lead those businesses the way they need to be led, in a way. And people back the business because of his leadership, despite his political views, despite all that, and his antics. He's ruthless. He's ruthless in his pursuit of getting rockets to fire into space and land, and whatever. Say what you will about the personality of the guy. That's aside, but his value as the CEO of those companies is kind of paramount to their existence. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, yeah, it's a unique position that only one person apparently can fill. Yeah.
It's not like he's a great human resource manager, but
Sure. I mean, he's created a job for himself, or a position for himself that is, unique in the world. And this is what you get, is a spectacle, right? And in our case, in working in coffee, you're creating the same. You kind of have a little microcosm of this, but to the degree that you have to share that authority, so that it's not just dependent upon you. So you're an example, you're not there right now, but it's being run. That would be an example of delegation that works, right? A lot of people would hear that and think, well, yeah, that's me. No one can do this job. No one can run this coffee shop except me. And eventually that gets old. And I do believe it's a business still, but it should be able to run without 100% depending upon you to run it, because that shares the opportunity for growth with other people. When you grow a business, you're not just growing more business for yourself, you're growing more opportunities for other people. That's at least a healthy way to think about growth, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and just so there's not any conjecture or ambiguity about that Elon Musk example. It's like, he's the only one that's delusional enough to think he can go to Mars, which is supposedly his motivation for SpaceX and stuff like that. So I don't think he's great at, visiting people and ensuring the team's, happy and the culture's all good. I think he just wants to break people to get to Mars and make billions and trillions of dollars.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But that's what his shareholders want him to do because it ultimately creates money for them.
Well, the question is, what do our shareholders want us to do? And who are the shareholders of coffee shops? I mean, there's staff, there's customers, then your family, people that depend upon you. That's pretty much it, right?
Well, now we're talking about stakeholders.
Oh yeah.
So I mean shareholders as well, but they're all tantamount to the cafe experience. And no, I 100% agree. But I want to. You and I were having a really fascinating conversation just over coffee before, and a lot of it's to do with automation. And
Sure.
I think we're at a really important fork in the road, particularly in specialty coffee. And just to frame the argument, we're talking about specialty coffee, if you want to talk about it commercial, because the capacity already really exists to have a fully automated cafe, and it can already be done. And there's this one called Mr. Adam, I think, in Melbourne. It's an entirely robot arm thing. I think I've seen someone there once. That's just not what the customer wants. Ultimately, people want the human element, because at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I've been talking about this a lot lately, but the human experience is always going to be fundamentally a part of the coffee experience, and we'll crave it more in an increasingly modern world. I used the term ruthless modernity before. The acceleration of modernization, I think, will only increase in the next few years because people stand to make money out of it. Big corporations stand to make a great deal of money out of it. And so they'll be motivated to create these products that will render human labor obsolete in myriad different industries. However, in coffee, that's not what we want. That's not what we like. So what are your thoughts on all of that for the listeners?
I mean, I agree that's not what we want. And sometimes I think we have developed a certain dependency on what's new, what's innovative, what's next, because we're afraid of entering in safely to something that's more deeply satisfying and meaningful. And coffee shops can be that space. People want that, and when they get it, they want it because when they get it, it's really remarkable. It's the thing people remark on the most when they are leaving 5-star reviews and when they're leaving 1-star reviews for experiences. It's always about an emotion brought up regarding people, mostly. I mean, there's quality issues or the bathroom is dysfunctional or something like that, right? But a lot of it, and most that I've seen, has been they're either rude or they're not rude. They're very friendly, and I always have a good experience here, and people appreciate that, and it comes from people. It's a hospitality is a people thing. It's not a technological novelty. It's something that people do for other people, and I think that it's going to be always wanted, especially now because. Think about I think an analog revolution. I mean, people used to say it was happening because everyone wanted to, have hi-fi systems or, really hear the crackle of wax, right? Instead of just CDs and things. Now, today, we have a hard time believing anybody even wrote anything for themselves because of AI. So in-person experiences are becoming even more important to assure us that what we're experiencing is actually happening, because we're just drinking from a fire hose of virtual reality, really. And so coffee shops can provide that. And at the same time, back to the insecurity of I'm starting a coffee shop, I'm spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to open this. If somebody can give me a machine that will guarantee my success, I'm primed and ready to believe that, and sometimes at the expense of that connection.
I think to throw something else in there as well, and I 100% agree on all of that, I think one of the to me, it's immoral, the amount of investment that has to go into making a cafe. I use the word immoral because you're compelled to do this fit out, which, is conforming to, I guess what you think is consumer expectation. And then the compunction to also purchase so much machinery that, to me, is the overinvestment in cafes is crazy. I think there's a significant overinvestment, but it's kind of required in a way as well. And to give you an example, like in Australia, the coffee market, I'm learning, in Australia versus America is fundamentally different. So a customer in Australia typically, let's say, uses 30 to 40 kilos a week of coffee in the cafe. They're typically more high volume. On average, you sell more coffees in a cafe in Australia than you do in Melbourne. But the system kind of works on this, like the roaster actually has to supply the machinery in a lot of cases. And that's like usually like $30,000 to $40,000 worth of machinery. And that's just chewing into that margin. And you know, in America, it's like you have to buy the customer the cafe has to buy the machinery. It's a philosophical difference between the two coffee markets as well. And I just think we kind of force ourselves to overinvest in, you know, fit outs and machinery.
Yeah. Well, this is huge because I posted something, a story, it's probably gone now, that is a breakdown that this coffee shop, I forget their name, did about how much it cost them to open their cafe. There's 50, there's 30 here, there's 40 there, there's the plumbing, electric, it's very huge. This place was about 2,000 square feet, by the way. And at the end, it was $400,000+. I've seen people with way bigger build outs, you know, millions of dollars for these cafes. That's a choice you make, hopefully knowing how you're going to make that money back. You have a pro forma that shows you long term what you're going to hopefully do. That's all hope.
On a fit out like that, you need to. It's like going to be 10 years before you even make your money back.
Yeah, and a lot of people have to keep on pumping personal money, and that's why I say if you have the money to do it, or you have financial backers, you're going to throw your money into making this look so impressive. The aesthetics are going to draw people in, which is a huge gamble, because these days, aesthetic is kind of a dime a dozen, you know, and people will almost distrust a beautiful space because they've experienced, I think people have been hurt by coffee in the past. They go to a beautiful place, they develop this like, oh, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden it's not. And they think, maybe now this is a sign that this cafe spent more money on their space than they did knowing what they were doing and how to keep doing it consistently. That's actually true for a lot of places. That's why I work with people, is to say, look, let's think about this. Like, what are the customers looking for? What is, let's go as small as we can, right? Let's not buy as much equipment as you think you want to buy. Let me ask, unto what? The question is, what's that going to do for you? Do you really need to have a, what do you call it, a kegerator doing cold brew on tap? Do you need it right now? But if you were saying that's what we want to do, it's unique in the market, there's plenty of products and machines that will fill that gap and answer that question. The answer is yes, you need this machine. They're salespeople. They're going to sell you machines. They're going to assume that you've thought through your decisions. And that's why people end up with these giant build-outs, tons of equipment, and they can't sell it. Now that, let's put it on eBay. I don't know what we were doing with this, but we can't use it because no one's buying our kombucha. No one's buying, remember kombucha?
Oh, yeah, I remember kombucha. I enjoy it. I enjoy it now and then.
See? I mean, but there was, not very long ago, everybody had kombucha on tap, and then some places still do, and it's doing well. But there's trends, and then there's evergreen things like, how can you deliver value to the customer in the things that they already love that you don't have to market to them to love?
If this podcast is a cinnamon roll, we're about to get into the core, so to speak, the juicy bit, the soft, tender part. Yes. And I think you're a skeptic of over-automation. And specifically relating to, like, let's throw the example out, a super automatic espresso machine.
Yeah.
And in a way, I both disagree and agree with you, because I think if you think that you're going to throw money at this thing and it's going to give you a solution to absolutely everything, you're gravely mistaken. But also, it can increase your capacity if you know what you're doing. But we've got this discourse now around that, and obviously, I've been at the center of a lot of it with my concept of pre-batching espresso. Yeah. And as we discussed earlier, it's kind of tending to a need in Australia. And just to refresh viewers' memory, I've quoted 2% average profit margin on a few podcasts. I did some further research. It's more like 3 to 5%. So not a huge jump, still heinously unsustainable. That's for Australian cafe profit margins. The average profit margin for cafes that are profiting is something like 3 to 5%, which is pretty pathetic. And so for us, which is high volume, high competition industry in Australia, we need to come up with more solutions, because the minimum wage in Australia is probably double what it is in America. It's like, someone worked it out the other day. It's effectively 38 Australian dollars an hour, which goes into leave entitlements. And if you're not employed full time, then you get what's called casual loading. So you get 25% extra, which, effectively means you get paid the same, because you're not getting, holidays and stuff like that. And then on top of that, we've got the equivalent to what's called 401k here. We call superannuation there, and it's mandatory that you make contributions. So that's 12.5% of the pay rate. So you've got to make superannuation contributions. So effectively, the minimum wage after all of that is 38 Australian dollars an hour. What's 30% of that? So 10% of 38 was to be $3.80 minus, so it's probably minus 12. So it's probably, close to $30 an hour, US. So the situation's fundamentally different. And so we need to come up with solutions, because the biggest expense in an Australian cafe is labour. And for me, to address that is to increase the productivity of staff by using something like pre-batching espresso. So throw it over to you. Starting with your kind of skepticism about some of those things.
I mean, it just really quick. I mean, that's the whole point, is what is your situation and how well do you know it to make the right decisions? So obviously you're the expert on what you need in your cafe. And so you can apply those to your cafe and say, just like you've said on the show, this is not for every cafe, but it's something that we feel we need. And I don't know how long you've been open at that location. How long has it been?
About 4 months.
4 months. And is it showing signs of having helped?
Yeah, definitely. But the challenge there is, like, a week after we opened, they erected massive scaffolding over the building, and like they're jackhammering the footpath. It's been a bit of a disaster, to be honest. Not the greatest start, because people can't actually access it properly and don't know where it is. So it's hard to grade right now. But it's breaking even.
And that's fine, I think, because there's a room for concepts in coffee all over. Where I get a little cagey around the ideas is that I think our industry has been dominated by and sponsored by tech companies and machine companies that postulate that whatever problem you're having in your business is quite obviously going to be fixed or helped, at the most they might say, helped by this machine. It's going to help you here. It can help. The wording is, it can help with. And so you say, okay, great. I'm going to switch out my perfectly fine espresso machine for a super auto. And it's going to save me on labor, because I need to have fewer people working, or I don't need as many people working. And it's going to save all this money. But ultimately, I don't know that it follows through with that promise, because when we think about the throughput of a coffee shop and the amount of work that scales with the expectation of the role, so you've got less people now, you save money on labor, the thing that they try to market is you now have more time. You free the barista up to connect with the customer. Customers don't want that much connection. They're really there for each other and for coffee and some connection with the barista. So there's really not an SOP or like a plan for how connection works past the point of actually making coffee, which is what baristas do. It's handmade. It feels like that's our specialty, and specialty coffee is making things for people. Like if I made a meal for you at my house, that is a special thing. When we take that away, I think we lose something in the industry, but also we forget that if the work continues, but the people go down, you basically break even in terms of all that connection talk. They won't have time. So those 2 baristas versus 4 now, the workload's essentially the same. It's just you're saving money on labor, and all the talk about connection with customers was just kind of like a get you in the door type of thing. And that's the way I've seen it for a while. The automation is not in and of itself bad. I think it's the mindset that's imported with it, and it kind of weaponizes a sort of disposition that we have to ensure success, which is too much reliance on equipment, because leadership, management, being with people, communicating with people, that's really what most coffee shops need more of. I feel like we're solving the wrong problems here. It's the machinery.
That's the interesting part, because that's not really scalable. And I think that these companies, or I guess specialty coffee businesses, have these desires to have lots of sites, because that means more money and stuff like that. But what you're saying is the most difficult thing to scale. Or do you disagree with that?
Oh, it's difficult to scale, but the difficulty creates the differentiation. If you can have a good experience in each iteration of that business slowly, we want to expand too fast. We look at these other models and we say, well, I want to be the next fill in the blank, whatever. It could be Blank Street, it could be Intelligentsia, a certain era. The idea is, let's shoot for these big goals, not knowing all of the things that go on behind the scenes. It's better, and I advise people this, look, wait a few years before you open your second location, at least a few years, to know yourself well enough to be able to handle the kind of work that's required to open a second location.
It's a lot.
What about your systems and your processes? You don't even know very much about your coffee shop to begin with. It's a kind of a co-created thing. Your customers mixing with your staff, mixing with your vision, and then your leadership in the midst of it. That's not scalable. When we say it's not scalable, I think technically the concept on paper is scalable if you create the aesthetic, the same machines, the same menu. You've scaled.
What's an example outside of coffee of something where it is heavily human service, I guess, related, they've successfully scaled that human training?
Well, it depends on what degree.
Because coffee is uniquely disadvantaged in a way because of the lack of investment capacity, right? So coffee shops aren't equipped to train people as highly or as well as large corporations that effectively might need good salespeople, for example, but they have the capacity for investment and giving a car and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just trying to think, what's an example of something that's incredibly human essential outside of coffee that they've managed to scale that kind of human aspect of it?
Depends on what you mean by scale and to what degree. So are you talking nationally? They have 100 locations?
Yeah.
I don't know that I could point to one except for people who stay privately owned, run very small. We're thinking about In-N-Out, for example, the burger place, right? It's just not going to open more locations than it needs to. It's going to ensure and keep strict limitations on who gets to run them because they have something they want you to experience. Very minimal in the way that they develop their menus. They're not going to try to do a bunch of things that make them water down the experience, I guess. But I don't know that we need 100 locations to prove the veracity of a scaling philosophy for coffee shops, because I don't think coffee shops technically need to have 100 locations, or that it's better for coffee for that matter. Nothing wrong with people who, if you're out there and you have 100 locations, I'm sorry. I mean,
what about something like Nobu? That's a restaurant that's we've heard I believe there's a bunch in the US, and then we've got them in Australia as well. And it's really high end, and people of high level of wealth tend to go to these places. Could that be an example? Because I just want to see if there's a precedent that we can follow that, or is it kind of something that we're trying to develop in ourselves?
I think the precedent would be, okay, so let's say if it's Nobu, sure, I guess I've never been personally, and I don't know how many locations they have, but I imagine if you want to do it well, you want to scale and reflect the service of one to the other, and you'd have to have the right people trained the right ways under the philosophy of the company. So you'd have to have an operational values already there. Only these people can run this place. And I don't know that that's true about a lot of large scale models, because the thing is, this is our menu is this way. Cheesecake Factory, for example, right? Crazy place. Actually pretty all right food. it's pretty neat. It's pretty decent. But it's a crapshoot whether or not you're going to get good service. I mean, mostly good service. But the point is not the people in that circumstance. It's more you got this giant menu, and that's their claim to fame, and they've made no bones about it. That's scalable because the service is not something that people are there for. It's cheesecake. It's the crazy menu.
I've got to say, one of my guilty pleasures since being in America is going to Raising Cane's chicken fingers.
Yeah.
They're good. You get that Texas toast. It's
right.
And that sauce. It's very good. Something I was thinking of as you were answering that is Luckin Coffee, and they're entering the US market, and I actually think they're going to fail.
Why is that?
Because China as a country is such a rapidly advancing technological powerhouse, right? Their people are conditioned to, because of the advancement of their industry, and because of the size of the country and the density of the population, like there's billions of people, over 1 billion people there. The cities are in, to transfer that is difficult. And I think we have a lot of Chinese students that come to Australia, for example, and we've got you can come to the counter at our shop, or you can go to the self-serve kiosk. And anecdotally, I think people from China they go to the self-serve kiosk because they're familiar with that ordering style. Yeah. And I think it's just in contrast with what Western culture kind of is, and kind of how Starbucks to me has conditioned the entire American coffee industry. And it's taken coming here and feeling it to kind of appreciate that, because, I think because of them, people sit on the laptops in cafes, and I think because of them, having these amenities and sitting in places is kind of shaped the way that the industry here is. And then you put this proposition of ordering off a screen. I went to the one and only time I went to Luckin, their screens weren't working. Business isn't operating. They don't have an option to order off a human.
Right.
And I just think that in combination with that, how low the coffee needs to be priced for people to actually go there.
Yeah.
And then there's also a bit of there's also some improprietary nature with them as well, where they've actually underreported or overreported their earnings and stuff in the past. So there's an ethical question there. Like, I don't actually think they're going to crush it in America.
Yeah, interesting. And you said something hopeful there, which is, we have begun with the Western world, for example. This you said earlier, the Starbucksification of things. Like, they trained a generation of people to expect a certain thing from a coffee shop, and rather than being the generation in coffee now to simply say, well, based on what's happened before, how can we kind of still ride that wave and be successful now? I think we're in a phase where we can reestablish and work to retrain people's expectations of coffee shops. So we're not trying to ride on the coattails of larger companies and say, well, what can we learn from Nestle? What can we learn from the Luckin Coffees of the world? And every think piece on LinkedIn is always trying to paint a rosy picture of this massive scale effort that somehow an independent coffee shop is supposed to aspire to. And I think that's it's apples and oranges. You're throwing your ladder up against the wrong building here. I don't think we should try to scale to that degree, because there's more room for local expression to do better work to represent coffee than there is. It's better for coffee to have local coffee shops springing up in their place that know their people, and than it is to have your coffee company grow to the degree that you've got outposts in all these different areas, right? Like when I'm in LA, I know there's a lot of places in LA that are just kind of my friend Andrew there at Mad Lab would call flag planters, the stump towns of the world that are not from there, but then they grab up a lot of that market share. And I understand this is the market, it's business, it's competitive. But I think that if we stop aspiring to massive scaling as though that's the end-all be-all of our operations, and just try to go deeper where we are, we have to ask a different question. Not is it scalable, but is it fulfilling? What does success look like for you running a coffee shop? Is it this massive footprint in the coffee world? Why? What's the goal there? Just more? There's something deeper that we need to ask, and I think that's what resonates with the customers. And so with super autos and this kind of thing, again, in and of itself, It's not the devil per se, but it's the marketing and it's the idea of pursuing a model, I think, that's inevitably going to hollow out the skills of baristas. Is going to hollow out it's going to divert our attention away from focusing on people, and we should kind of flush the ability of our coffee shops to be more differentiated, because now your differentiator is something that other people can purchase easily. Whether it's syrups, because people talk about this all the time. They think, oh, that people down the road, they stole my recipe because they used these different combinations of lotus syrups and they did like a tiki breeze energy thing. And we did that, and now they're going to take our business. But if that's the differentiator for your business, just as much as we're fast, we have the super auto, whatever the gimmick is right now, somebody else eventually is going to purchase that, and now we have to reinvent ourselves again, rather than having established these deeper relationships with our customers who do the marketing for us. That's where I land on this.
Yeah, I hold me to it. Maybe I'm wrong in 5 to 10 years, but I don't think Luckin's going to really take off the way people speculate that it will,
right,
because it's just fundamentally against what the Western expectation of coffee is. And there's very big differences between the European, American, and Australian market for coffee. But I think there's also similarities in our mindset and what we appreciate in life. And that's not to degrade some people could perceive that as me saying that being critical of China and Chinese people. They have their own situation within their country. They also are like, there's hyper levels of competition within China and countries like Indonesia, where one person opens something and then someone else sees an opportunity and they open something very similar because they can.
Yeah.
And they can get it done really quick, and the human resources are significantly cheaper there, and the populations are really conditioned to embrace technology because it's one out of necessity, because life is so fast paced there.
Sure, yeah, and it's fast paced in a lot of places because that's what we're told we should want. Faster, we want it more convenient, and if we slow down long enough, which we actually won't do if we're buying into that philosophy, we're just going to go. We think about what we're training people to expect of our cafes. If it's only that you're really fast, I don't think that that's enough to make people come back to you. You've got to deliver on the things that earlier you were talking about, the way that your staff are handling customers, the type of people you want to work for you. That's what's going to bring people back. That you have pre-batched espresso, it will come and go. Probably.
Yep.
I mean, just like any other innovation, and honestly, it's just a more technologically stable version of a thing that people were doing in the 90s anyway.
Yeah.
Because people were saving shots back then. I remember nasty pitchers filled with old espresso.
Well, it's amazing how many people have kind of messaged me or come up to me and said, oh, like, I've been doing this on the sly for a long time, and particularly with like ice drinks and stuff like that. I think the hype will die down about it, and then I'm pretty committed to it, and I think it's got capacity beyond just in a coffee shop. I won't leak too many of those details now, but I'm working on some products for like at home, for example.
Sure.
I think fundamentally, let me ask you this question: if you're opening a cafe, what are the three most important? What are the three foundations? If there are three, maybe there's one, maybe there's two, but what are probably the three most important foundations upon which you're building it if Chris Deferio is doing it tomorrow?
I've always focused on people, operations, and quality. And that's very general, but what that means is first we think about and get that really vivid vision for what does it look like to have been in, experienced, and walk out of this place. Now, reverse engineer that. Who needs to work there? What does that look like for the seats and the space, and everything else kind of follows from the experience you think about people having. That's one, is the people. So I hire this kind of person. I have to be this kind of leader. That means I have operations that back up those values. If I don't have the values first and the people first, the operations are only serving themselves. And that's why a lot of places end up kind of hollow. It's because that first principle wasn't determined. And so then I'm going to say, well, how does my schedule look? Do I have enough time to talk to my people? Am I overscheduling my manager? Am I burning them out? How am I compensating? Am I paying as much as I can or just what I can get away with? It is a philosophical difference between the two of them, right? So the operations are just the systems and the structures that back up the experience. And then the quality part of it is, what is the taste of my beverage? What does a latte taste like? What does a cortado taste like? I want to know how everybody is making everything. And I've got to know my people more, even more than I know my coffee. Honestly, if I'm in the business of opening a coffee shop, that's ultimately the biggest hindrance to consistency is the people factor. And that's why we see all this stuff popping up, is because it's almost like this a back door getting away from, like, oh, I don't have to actually manage people. I could just take that out of the equation. But what that does is it doesn't allow you to grow. Because in relationship, we grow together, me as a boss, you as a barista. And so I wanted to be a little bit more analog. I'm not trying to do a lever machine or anything like that per se. I don't see anything wrong with it. Charles Babinski is doing that right now. What is it, 312?
3-on-2, I believe.
Yeah.
In Sydney.
Yeah.
As well.
Very simple. And he was on the show talking about he had been over in LA doing the thing, like what you do, scale, big time operations. And now in his career, he's seeking simplicity and connecting with the customer. He's got a Oliva?
Yeah, Loves Like Oliva.
And so for me, it's like, how I don't want to be so distracted by the complexity of what I'm doing that I don't allow myself the ability to focus on people and notice things and then change what I'm doing based on the feedback and conversation I'm having with my customers, with my staff.
One important thing I just want to point out as well is the importance of what is an investment in a coffee business and what's an expense.
Yes.
We're talking about the risks of technologifying. I don't even know. Embracing tech, basically. But I do think there's an important discussion to be had here about paramount investment, so to speak. I actually think the most important investment you can make in a cafe in 2026 is your ice machine. Believe it or not, because ice is not created equal. And shout out to my bartenders listening to this, because if you buy, we've got a Hoshizaki ice machine at our cafe, and Hoshizaki, you need to sponsor me. I'm selling you machines left, right, and center here. There's literally been 5 cafe owners that have bought a Hoshizaki, $7,000 a pop because of me. But it is because the drink trend is skewing heavily towards ice drinks nowadays, and if you have a good ice machine that enhances the quality of the drink, so it's not diluting, it produces enough so you don't have to go to the service station to buy more ice, and it's got productive capacity. That's a really good investment. That if people like that, they'll tell more people. They'll get their girlfriends with their ice matchas to come, and that's a huge part of the industry now. That's an investment. That's a good investment.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not an expense. Electricity, that's an expense. Rent, that's an expense. That's an investment. So what are some other good investments you can make in your business?
I mean, obviously the machinery that you get in the business, it's enough that you can handle it, and that you've got a backup machine, maybe a one-group espresso machine in the back in case something goes down. That's a great investment. And another thing that cafes, I think today, and I've been telling everybody this, if you have an ability to be mobile in your business, you are going to be more likely to get out into your community and market your brick and mortar. If you want to win with brick and mortar, you need to get out in your community. So if you invest in the ability, even if it's just a minimal cart of some kind with a little one group espresso machine and grinder, and you can go to events, even if you didn't have espresso, and you just did that. Invest in some ability to get out into your community and showcase what you do and bring people to the brick and mortar. And I'm surprised more people don't do that, because what we're taught is we just put the shingle up and we say, well, I'm open, you should come here. And then we just do it, as many crazy things as we can on TikTok to get people to be like, oh, maybe I should go there. And I don't know if it works.
So what's a more specific example of investing in the community?
Well, I mean, your investment into community is about your schedule and your personal time. So, for example, people who I've worked with that say, well, I'm having traffic issues. People aren't coming into my cafe. They don't know we're here. Well, have you introduced yourself personally to people in your neighborhood within a 1 mile radius? We go onto the maps, we look at all these businesses, we say your job in the next month or two is to have met the owners of these businesses and have given them like a map, like with a star, where my place is. Go meet people, form relationships, take the first step of bringing them in, because everybody is just blinders on, algorithm addicted. They're not going to go to your coffee shop unless you let them know you're there. So your schedule has to be free enough to be able to do that. But your schedule will fill up instantly.
So
without that.
To play a hypothetical here,
Yeah.
are you kind of suggesting, like, say for example, I've got my shop and I go introduce myself to the butcher down the road and the guys at the IT shop and the music store, and that's kind of like, you've met those people who might say, hey, there's a great coffee shop down the road. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're talking about? And the snowballing effect of that person who got referred by the butcher, for example, then says, oh, I really enjoyed my time there. Tells a friend, you should go there. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, basically, if they know Kirk and not just Project Zero, then I think people are more likely to recommend the place, because now there's a personal connection and you've invested in some time. There's this law of reciprocity, really, that you go out, you say, I'm going to give, and then it's my time, it's my attention. You might even give somebody a shout out that doesn't even do business with you, who's local. So now you're setting yourself up as the place where your community sees itself, because it sees itself on your Instagram account, it sees you personally. That's what I'm talking about.
One philosophy that I really want to mention during this podcast is that you should treat your suppliers as if they're customers. Yes. And because to give you an anecdote, I used to work as a sales executive for a milk company. And so I'm very much involved with, all the customers and, managing accounts and all that sort of thing. And, it's a pretty standard practice for cafe owners to review their suppliers and, based on price, they want to change. So often when you go the cheaper option, it just ends in disaster. You get a poorer service, you don't have the relationship, and it just doesn't always work out. You think you're saving money, but you're costing yourself in other ways. But treating your customers like your suppliers like their customers, I used to have, so in the milk game, often drivers don't come to work to deliver the milk because, for myriad different reasons. And it used to mean that sometimes I had to go out and deliver their customers their milk, because that's what a good supplier does. And there was one example where there was one Saturday, my day off, where the driver didn't come, but there were two customers that desperately needed milk that day. One of them was a customer that was like, I really liked going there. They treated me really well every time. If ever there was a price rise and I had a dialogue with them, they were understanding and all that sort of stuff. The other was just this monster that, constantly made me feel like I'm going to lose the account, swearing at me, didn't acknowledge. And I could only deliver to one of those customers. Who do you think I went to? So, having that dynamic, like I would have done both if they were both nice, but it's like, you know what? I've got a Saturday to enjoy here. I'll go hook up my homeboy. That's human nature. You might think what I'm saying is improper, and it probably was, but that's human nature. You look after people that effectively look after you. Always treat your suppliers as if they're customers.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah. And that means and there's other forms of that as well, like the delivery driver. Hook them up with a coffee. The delivery driver is kind of like the gatekeeper of all knowledge. Like if I'm Lord Varys, my little birdies are the delivery drivers. They have with them so much information that's important. Like it's so paramount. Hook up your delivery drivers with a coffee or a donut or whatever.
And it's not, you're not bribing when you do that. And I've done this with the UPS drivers and the delivery drivers for a company like here locally called Creation Gardens, and we got all of our stuff. Sometimes they give a bunch of lemons instead of lemon juice. Like, this is weird. And they'll fix it for you because they know you, and they do make that decision. Like, I like these people. They give me free coffee. It's not so they give me free coffee, therefore. It's that coffee represents that you actually care about them.
Hospitality.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
It works with every relationship that you have. If you're just pretending hospitality, people can sniff out bullcrap a mile away.
These people are part of the community, really, as well. To round it back off to that, and for example, we've got our delivery driver Zach Attack, who listens to the podcast, who delivers our coffee, and one of the most exciting parts of the week is when he comes on a Wednesday, and it's usually between 11 a.m. and midday, and he walks in and he just yells, "What's that?" It's one of the most exciting parts of our week is when Zach comes, and and we have a coffee together, and what coffee do you want to try this week? And but beyond that, he will move things for us if we need to. One time I needed help moving something in the van, and he was like, "I gotcha." Like, I'm not saying I give him coffee because I wanted to give me favors, but it's just like the dynamics of it are super important. And if you're in a capacity where you're spending a lot of money, like, these relationships are critical.
It's the barista. So if we want to think about this back to the idea of what customers are looking for in a cafe, when they experience something genuine, warm, and consistently so, it's like striking gold. You really have, it's sad to say, but in the world of hospitality, there's a lot of people who use the word, but the service itself does not reflect the values that they espouse. And so that's why people don't trust it. And to the degree that there was once a girl who was maybe one of the best examples of hospitality. Her name was Molly. She worked at a local coffee shop where I was the GM, and we got a complaint about her. And the complaint was that she was being sarcastic, or that she was being disingenuous in the way she was at the register. I know Molly very well. And the reason that they wrote this was they said, nobody can be that nice. And that's so sad that people don't know what nice looks like. So they think it's fake. They're not used to it. And so I just laughed at that. I'm like, man, she's great.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. That's more, it speaks more to like the healing that you need. Right?
Who hurt you, bro?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, and us. We did it. So I feel like in some ways we have to reorient people to, not the customers are like stray cats or anything like that, or just like rescue animals, but they're cagey around this. Like, I'm paying a lot of money. The last time I paid a lot of money for something, it was bad. Or the last time I parked and got out of my car, came in, you were on your phone, and you didn't acknowledge me. So now I'm going to Whole Foods and I'm making lattes in my kitchen, right, with my concentrate. That's what people do. So half of the innovations that we've got in the industry make up for our lack of delivery of what customers have always wanted. So we're a little too clever with the way we're avoiding culpability and the way people don't trust coffee.
We're probably ending towards the end of our battery life on the camera. Producer David Ball, can you see what percent the battery's on at the moment?
43.
Oh, so we've still got a little bit of time. So, but I want to throw it out to you. Okay. I've been asking you a lot of questions. Have you got any for me?
Yes, I do.
Hit me.
Okay, so I mean, on the show, we'd like to interview people, Founder Friday episodes with their story of coffee. I'm just kind of curious what your vision for coffee shops personally are. You've got these concepts that are kind of making waves. So like you kind of jokingly, and maybe not jokingly, call yourself the most hated man in coffee because of
I don't call that, but other people call me that. But
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. The concepts that you're putting together with your cafes and your view of the industry, I'm just kind of curious what you're hopeful for in coffee shops and what your personal vision for a great coffee shop is.
think it very similarly aligns with what you are. I'm someone that's really fascinated by the high ends of specialty coffee. Like how well can we create great experiences, but how well can we make a cup of coffee? That's just something I'm personally very interested in, and it's obviously a reflection in my business. I do have a somewhat pessimistic view of the future of the industry for some things, and a positive view for others.
Hit me with it.
I think there's a broader argument to be made in society that wealth is becoming more concentrated, and that ultimately, and it's particularly apparent in America, to be honest. Like the real estate for a commercial site in the downtown of pretty much any major city here is crazy. It's beyond what it is in Australia, and independents can't really open coffee shops. Like in downtown Chicago, I saw a Blue Bottle, but the good coffee shops like Metric and Dayglow, they're well outside the downtown. And I only see that becoming worse, to be honest. And I think it'll particularly become reflected where I'm from in Australia, more so than here. So we have this kind of existential issue of low coffee prices, and it's kind of come about from ultra high levels of competition within specialty coffee, the likes of which you won't really know until you come to Melbourne to see. And lots of creators, content creators, come to Australia. And one good example is a gentleman named Zach Tellender, he's a country musician in America, gaining increasing levels of fame. And he came to Australia and he made a series of videos of like trying to find a bad coffee. And he actually came and made a video at our shop.
I saw that.
And because there is, like, for a flat white, there's a very high floor in Australia. But because of the unwillingness of customers to pay more, I think you're going to get your cheap coffee, but it's going to be in the form of Starbucks. It's going to be in the form of Luck and Light kind of things, Blank Street style businesses. That's the future of the Australian coffee industry, to be honest. There'll be a select few really special coffee experiences. Not everyone will make it, and I just think the future of Australian specialty coffee, unfortunately, is more chains, and it's kind of stems from a broader argument in society, or broader thing that's happening in society of rents just increasingly climbing, electricity, minimum wage, which is particularly high in Australia. But I think the future of coffee shops that are special, and we probably there's a good moral case for closing a lot of specialty cafes in Melbourne. That's my belief, because there's just far too many. It feels like when one closes, three more open. It's bizarre. But the future is less people in cafes, but more skilled people in cafes.
Oh, yes.
So I think, having, for example, a cafe that currently runs on 2 really will need to operate with, currently runs with 4, will need to operate with 2. But those 2 people should be, Avengers. And trained really well, and super special, and they need to be paid well. They must be paid well to sustain that job, because it would just be fantastic. And I think we leak so much talent in coffee because people can't get by on the salary.
Right.
So I'm hopeful that the future is less people in cafes, but more skilled people, because we reach a dead end when cafes need to be economically viable as well. It's all like people can scream at me and say, what about employing more people, taking away jobs? The system is not set up for that. It's not conducive to that, realistically. And it's not so much of specialty coffee owners being greedy or evil. It's a part of a broader sort of reflection of society and the way it's going.
Yeah, man, I like the idea, especially because it kind of coincides with the deeper, not wider, in the same way that you say less people in coffee, there's less coffee shops. more concentration of expertise in the coffee shop. I like the cross training. They can do a lot of things. They're very well compensated. It sounds like a professional job.
It should be.
You see?
But what coffee suffers from is a lack of professionalism.
Sure.
And that's probably that's how you make your money. Giving people more professionalism.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here in the space of David Ball, who's previously run Now and Then, and does this really special sommelier coffee experience, which is held in very high regard.
Yeah.
That's the future of specialty coffee shops.
Right.
And more people, are becoming interested in coffee globally. And not everyone can do it. Not everyone will be able to do it. But I think that's kind of where we're heading.
Fewer, better shops.
Very few better shops and more chains, but the better shops will be more special.
Yeah. And
to be honest, the scarcity of the better shops or good shops is kind of what will create the specialty aspect of it. Demand and supply. If there's too many, it's not really special anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're suffering from now, and a correction will take place. Maybe correction's not the word, but just reality will set in. Look at the way the world's going these days, and I worry for it a lot of the time. I'm sure we all do, but I just think that's ultimately where we're headed.
Well, let me ask you about the size of a space. Because I think there was a time when people were trying to open very large spaces, and those are sometimes sustainable. It depends on the business you're getting. If you can use that space for a co-roasting facility, and you can just sell out pieces and rent it out, and people open with a large footprint with the idea that, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a multi-use space. But it feels like things are getting smaller, and that they have to. The footprint kind of will be the determining factor is whether you can get away with 2 baristas versus 4. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting you bring it up, and let's use Blank Street as a model, because they started very small with their smaller spaces, and they've kind of realised that it's in our interest to have slightly more comfortable spaces.
Yeah.
And kudos to them for kind of adapting to that as well. But you kind of need to. It's very difficult to do. But you need to kind of work out or try and get a formula for every square inch of your business or your space making you money.
Yeah.
Are the table layouts correct? Can you use this space to actually fit more people? Is your seating functional? Are your tables functional? I think it's very hard to do. Maybe it's impossible, but you need to kind of, I think, analyze, can every square inch of this business make me money? And with my OG shop in King Street in Melbourne, it's I really want to just knock the whole thing down and build it again, because I made some mistakes with the fit out.
Oh, yeah? What would you change?
So there's only one point in which the staff can walk in and out of the bar.
Yeah. And
I would love to, have 2, because, different sections of the cafe. Because in Australia as well, and this is different here in America, we actually it's standard for us to run the coffee to the table, whereas here you call out the name, and there's a cost to that. There's a it's not clearly signposted, but there is a cost to that. So that would be one of the first things. I had this tree in the cafe. Never ever get a tree in a cafe. It's an absolute fucking nightmare. Pardon the French. And it died. But then when we pulled it out, it was attracting insects because we overwatered it, and we thought it was underwatered, but we overwatered the tree, and because of the moisture in there, it started attracting bugs and shit like that. So I was like, we got to get rid of this thing. I'd probably fit that out. Also, I'd love to hide the dish area, because it's one of the things that you can see from the back. So it's I really wish that we put that in a corner with a barrier or something, because I just hate it when customers can see our dishes.
That's true, yeah. And all that well-considered thought about your area is all about what the customer perceives, and then how quickly can you attend to a customer if you have to. You might not even do it if you're so closed into the bar and you have nowhere to go. The customer has to fend for themselves. The bus tray gets taller. Well, in your case, maybe not, because you've got people going in and out. But Yeah, I've taught a coffee shop design course for a little bit at Coffee Fest, and that's one of the things we talk about is, first of all, like walk through the process, and very painstaking details. Walk in like this is what it's like to make a latte. This is what it's like to be a customer. But that table is right here, so you don't want a customer's butt in your face, right? So you're just not going to have a table there. That's not losing you money, actually. It's saving you money because the customer is not going to feel bad.
Yeah, we had tables where it was like, chairs and a table that you literally sit on because we're in like a laneway that's covered, so which we occupy totally ourselves. And so, but to me, like the feel of it was just wrong. And I also looked at it, I was like, we probably could double the amount of people that can sit here if we reconsider what tables and chairs we use. So what I did was we replaced all of those with benches that sit against the wall and other tables. So we actually increased we improved the traffic and lack of congestion through the alleyway. Yeah. We doubled the seating capacity and we improved the vibe all in one thing. So those little kinds of things, I think it's hard to identify, but it's really important that you can.
Yeah. It sounds like the market there is so saturated with coffee concepts that every little bit of advantage you can gain for how a customer feels in your space and experiences your space is potentially the differentiator, that they might not even know that that's why they're making the decision, but it's just something about your place feels good.
Yeah. What's good about it now is that it can be more communal because we've opened up that space. People can hang around and talk to their friends. In winter, there's these heaters that they can now stand under, and it's comfortable. Yeah. And so like you've only got really one chance to get your layout right, and if you don't, it's terminal for the business. Holy cow, yeah. So it's something that you really need to consider. It's probably something worth paying a little bit of money for a consultant like yourself to kind of consider as well, because if you don't get it right, that $5,000 that you might have spent on, I don't know what your rates are, but that money that you could have spent on a consultant is a fraction of the money you've lost from having a failed venture.
Oh man, like you, I'm sure I've worked some bars that are just a nightmare. Workflow nightmare. They look beautiful, but you hate working on them. And that's the biggest thing, that it has to be functional for the menu. So you design it based on the menu. What's your menu? This is what this whole space is meant to deliver, is the menu. So when you're thinking about walking through your concept, you've got to think about all of those details of what the customer is experiencing. And honestly, the baristas are not going to really feel that great in a bar that's ill-considered. They're not going to, we like to talk about upselling. They're going to feel very, what's the word? There's a lot of self-preservation instinct that kicks in as a customer and as a barista when you're working in a place that's really dysfunctional. So I've had people where they just don't sell the pour over because it's a lot of work. It actually wasn't considered very well for the workflow, so they just sell the drip. And they're not incentivized to sell what the customer actually wants. They'll sell what is more convenient for them. And the customer is same. They'll try to not be in your space, and they'll associate you with like that dysfunctional seating area. Things are just wobbly. Things are cramped.
Well, I spoke to the most successful cafe, I think, in Australia is called Patricia Coffee Brewers. Very well known, and the owners are just so dialed as to what the feel of customers is. It's very impressive, and I've done a podcast with them. So if you want to go back and listen, I encourage you to do so. But he mentioned to me is like, one of the things that we talked about was having to step into a cafe. If you're walking into a cafe, like literally walking up steps to enter it, and how that's actually a subconscious deterrent for some people. Because they don't think about it, but it's like these levels of comfort. Do I have to? Is it just too much of a hassle for me to go and do that? Something I never really considered. They also do this thing. They also supply sparkling water to every customer that goes in. Sorry, a choice of either still or sparkling. To 1,200 people, they have to give sparkling water to each day, which is effectively a staff member's job. But it's also that offer has brought them in so much more business because they're catering to the comfort of the guest. Everything needs to be about the comfort of the guest, giving value. Whether it's selling a $6 latte to go, whether it's Davey selling a $30 pour over. It all ultimately has to come back to the customer. And love it or hate it, it's like Jeff Bezos. He's obsessed with like the customer being able to get like a super efficient thing, which has probably driven Amazon to where it is today. Like, can they get it today on Amazon Prime?
Right.
It's like just things like that. It's ultimately has to be customer focused.
Well, the Unreasonable Hospitality book, Will Guidara's thing, where he, before writing the book, there was this documentary on Netflix. I forget what it was called, like 5 days until the opening of 11 Madison Park. Mm-hmm. And it shows, young Will, going around in the front of the house, sitting in cushions is one part where he's just like, is this something the guests would really like? And they're just really racked over these cushions.
The rocking table.
Yeah. Exactly. So what are we doing? Like, I travel with a door jamb in my bag because of tables at coffee shops. I just don't trust it.
Really?
I really do. I think it's in my bag right now. And so I just gotta watch out for myself, So the customer, though, they ultimately feel that stuff, but they don't necessarily know how to articulate it. So they just kind of like throw haymakers of feedback on Yelp and it wasn't good. They don't know how to describe it. Our job is to obsess over the details so they don't have to notice those details. They just have to enjoy them. So I like to talk about it like, if the air system here in this building turned off right now, you and I would both keep talking, but we would both register something stopped. That's white noise. Every cafe has this natural amount of white noise that something is dysfunctional. It's not the best service. It's not the best coffee. It's serviceable. But if you can eliminate that white noise and turn that off by obsessing over those details, the customer walks in and they think, this is weird. I don't know how to describe it, but it feels good. Like they hit it, and they did it again. It's even weirder. Now you've got them for life. Again, no gimmicks required. You just need to be good at what you do, even if what you do is minimal.
What do you? One thing I think we do that is like it's not really a financially pragmatic thing to do, but more of a emotionally pragmatic thing to do is like, we don't charge extra for alternative milks at our shop.
Okay.
And I think it's because for some reason that just pisses people off when they have to pay an extra 50 cents for oat milk or soy milk. Understandably, their coffee is more expensive because it's more or less the same thing. However, plant milks are almost double the cost of cow's milk. Yeah. And so, but it's just because it's like a smaller portion of sales, kind of makes sense for me to do it, and I just make people happier. Like, do you think we need to assess what's really worth the fight? Is it worth the smoke to pay extra for these things?
It depends on your community. If you've got people that are really wanting to fight you on it, then you might consider something like that. The conversation needs to be nuanced based on your relationships and your customers. There's no such thing as the customer that applies to every community, but we like to pretend it does. So yeah, maybe if you absorb the cost or distribute it over the whole menu and raise your prices so that nobody has to worry about paying extra, great, okay, then you have to do the math to make sure that actually works. And that's all I want you to do is like think about down the path of more business and people take you up on that. Are you making money? Or are you losing money based on your altruism? If you're just trying to make people happy, but you're not making money, you can't keep making them happy. See, so you have to be profitable. So I really don't care what you do, as long as it is meaningful for you and your community, and that conversation is well regarded, and you can make money doing it long term, which means you'll be around for a while, 20, 30 years. I'd love to see coffee shops last decades. I love those stories.
Yeah.
I like stories of places that actually have been around for 30 years and we don't know who they are. They're just happy to run a coffee shop, and they don't have very much social media. They just run their cafe, and somehow they're happy. I don't know, how do they do that?
Well, you look at George Howe, for example. He's someone that I interviewed recently, and he's been in Boston for years. Yeah. And started George Howe in I think 2001.
Right.
It's currently 2026. That's 25 years. And just his values were good service, roasting coffee really well, sourced it ethically, and here he is still standing to this day.
Yeah.
What are the final questions I'll ask you? What is your, similar to what you asked me, what's your vision for the coffee industry 20 years from now? Like, where do you see it? Where would you like to see it go as one part, but where do you realistically see it going?
I think realistically, we're going to, and I think we see it now with a lot of more culturally rooted cafes. People are saying, this is who I am, this is who my family is and my culture. I'm going to double down on that in the way that I operate. The menu is going to be infused with who we are and to represent our neighborhoods, to really be that third place in a attainable way, not in a, like, I'm going to shoot for the stars and try to be these large scale models. I think that's played out. If you want to go for that, okay, but my hope is that we're going to see more really good small cafes that can scale maybe to a couple of locations, 2 or 3 locations. You've got the roasting program, maybe, but that we're operating for better reasons than just impressing each other in the industry. And I think we do this comparison a lot where, well, I'm not exactly where they are, so I have room to grow. We have to view growth differently, and we have to view our fulfillment as something that is not unachievable. You could be happy. You really could be happy if you weren't constantly comparing yourself to larger companies that have more money, more stores. I would hope to see more of those small concepts that are effective in providing jobs for their baristas, for their staff that are leadership staff, and for the families that operate the coffee shop, the owners. They can all, I like this concept we've had on the show, an interview with somebody representing the open book management, great game of business philosophy, which is basically just helping people see how their work contributes to the bottom line of the company and then rewarding them financially for the growth of the company. And the guy who started that, I forget his name, but he said like his goal for his company was that everybody who works for him, no matter who it is, can buy a house with cash. And that's, how do we do that? If our businesses can just be deeper, more effective, and as minimal as possible to bring more professionalism to roles and find just happiness in the simplicity of service to our communities, that's the kind of coffee shop I think people really love and search for in corporate entities. And the corporate entities, they want to borrow from that vibe all the time. Starbucks had, what was it, Fifth Avenue Coffee and Tea back in the day. It was like a secret Starbucks store meant to be like a independent store because they knew there was something about that. But they're trying to strip mine that aspect of the industry. We're the source. It's in our backyard. We can capitalize on it instead of just trying to be more like those larger scaled companies. We can just be more like ourselves.
I've got a nuclear hot take.
Okay.
Nuclear hot take. It's not really relevant to what you were just saying, but I think the weekend will die. I think we won't have weekends anymore in the future. Maybe 10, 15 years from now.
For what?
Well, if you think about it, so it's got an implied social value, right? The weekend is for family and for recovering and resting, and there's also like a lot of religious ethos in that as well. Like the Sabbath and things like that, and it's got a purpose, but I think from a business perspective, I think people look at that and it's like, why do we hibernate our business for 2 days out of 7? And this relentless pursuit of economic growth and the over corporatization of society. I think someone's going to come along one day and think to themselves, well, we don't need that. I think that eventually someone will think to themselves, we can just get economic growth by just opening up an extra 2 days a week, because coffee shops open 7 days a week, but it's like, someone that works as an accountant. I think people will probably shift to 4 days. I'm not saying people will work 7 days, but I think businesses will try and open for 7 days. And it's like, well, maybe we do like a 4-day split, for example, where 1 week you work 4 days and the next week you work 3, and you alternate, and the people that work 3 days, they work on the weekend days, because we want to keep our productive capacity increasing. Is it something I want to happen? No. Is it something I think will happen? Ultimately, yes. And it goes to time as well. I think we'll run our businesses longer in the evenings and stuff like that, because it's a social value to have that time off. But I think, the way we you look at the way Uber kind of works, and, with the way we shop online and for stuff like that, ultimately I think that, greed will get the better of society, and, businesses will run for 24 hours and 7 days a week.
This is painting a dark picture. This is your pessimism coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to be pretty cynical of a lot of things. And I think I want to focus on being optimistic too, though, in that, yes, there might be a season where people are forced, just because they keep on trying to squeeze more and more productivity out of life. At a certain point, I think people will wake up and there's going to be a swing back the other way, where it's not weekends disappearing, it's more like enhancement of that. It's a more effective in the time that we have, so that we can afford to enjoy the time that we're not working. I enjoy models like Orchard Coffee in Waynesville, North Carolina. Our friend Cabell Tice runs that. He and his family, they own the building, and when they do family things, the cafe is closed. And it's okay. And it's productive for him because his values are not productivity at all costs. It's a redefinition of what we're after. If just blind productivity is as effective as having systems with no goal. So I think we're going to be looking in the mirror and saying, who have we become? What have we sold? How have we, it's like a Faustian bargain. Like, we sold our soul in order to gain what profit margin do we have in coffee shops anyway, right?
Yeah, well, I guess we're the best current example of it today is in China with the 996 concept. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So most of the, I'm not going to say most, but a lot of people in China are employed they work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And it's because labor is so expendable over there, these people feel like they are compelled to do this. And that exists today. And I think where we're heading in society now, unfortunately, I think that will creep into countries like America and Australia.
Well, sure, in some facets.
I hope it won't, but I realistically think it will.
And who knows? Maybe this conversation will be the catalyst for people putting their foot down and be like, "No, we're not gonna make it happen," right?
Fuck off is what I'm saying.
I mean, that honestly will be what people say, though, when they realize how much it costs them to get where they maybe you're successful and you make that money, or you are productive and you sit there with all of your productivity and say, "This doesn't fulfill me." And you might have to get to the end of yourself to find that, and then say, well, I'm going to reinvent what I'm after, and I'm going to make it more simple. And you see this all the time with people who make their money on Wall Street, and then they go and, like, I don't know, this is just my vision of it, is they go up, start a hobby farm in Vermont, I make cheese now, but I used to be on the floor, But you could have been making cheese this whole time, so what stopped you from doing that, right? It's simplicity that we want, but ego that drives us to be productive. And so the sooner you can kind of get over yourself, the happier you can be sooner. That doesn't mean you're not productive. It just means you're productive for better reasons. Yeah,
I really hope the weekend doesn't die. I've kind of scared myself now.
That'd be crazy.
Oh, damn. Hey, look, we've been going for, I don't even know how long, but it's been a fair while now, and I got to go book I'm going to Houston tomorrow. I don't have accommodation booked, so I better go do that. And I've got to plan my week out. So thank you so much for taking the time. Drove 2.5 hours from Louisville, Kentucky to Nashville to do this podcast. It's a collaborative effort. It's really good to meet you. It's I'm really glad we got to have this conversation, and I think this is something that, I mean, it probably sounds self-ingratiating here, but this is something that every coffee professional should listen to. This has been a really good discussion, and we touched on a few really important things here. And fundamentally, I love what you're doing with and what you're saying about what really matters in a cafe, and blending it in contextually with kind of some of the things that I'm doing, which are perceived quite negatively. So it's it's been a really good meetup, and you're someone I've wanted to do a podcast with for quite a long time, and I'm so glad we got to do it in person. It's always really excellent to do it in person. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've been talking about it online a little bit for the better part of a few months now.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you and your work.
Thank you. So where can we find you? Keys to the shop?
Yep, keystotheshop.com, at keys to the shop on Instagram, email Chris, CHRIS, at keystotheshop.com.
by now a couple of Oatly ads would have played, but I got to round out with my last sponsor, Barista Group. So if you do want to invest in some of that tech, like the Uber Milk, which we didn't discuss somehow, but the Uber Milk, best machinery, one of the best pieces of equipment you can invest in for your cafe. So it's the thing that automatically steams milk for you. You can do so at baristagroup.com.au. Reach out to Joe; they'll sort you out. They're the best. They've really helped me with what I'm doing. And if you go to an Australian coffee bar, a lot of them have these units now. Okay. It's really standard because of our flat white drinking culture. So baristagroup.com.au. Thanks so much, Chris, for coming on, and we'll wrap it up there. Very Australian way of saying goodbye is hooroo. So point down the barrel, say hooroo to everyone. Hooroo. Hooroo, mate. All right, let's do it. Thanks for having us, Davey Ball from Draped in Blue.
You can either listen to the third Oatly ad of the day about how you can go to oatly.com and find recipes for the amazing drinks, or read the Future of Taste report. It's from the future. Or learn about the sustainability work. Or you can press the 15-sec forward button on your Podplaying device. It's totally up to you.